Here's what we plan to spend this year. Almost $3.8 trillion. Trouble is, tax revenue is expected to bring in less than 2/3 of that, leaving another deficit of $1.3 trillion. The president wants to reduce that by raising taxes on rich people and cutting spending, but cutting only a little. He wants to spend more on some things. And that's great, says Rich Benjamin of the progressive think tank Demos. No, it's horrible, says Stuart Varney, host of this network's Varney and Company. So horrible, why?
If you took that budget of the family that you were talking about there, I would call that irresponsible. You look at the president's latest budget, that too is irresponsible.
Well, countries are different from families somehow.
Okay, well, it runs up the debt, doesn't it? Enormously. By the time this budget is through, if it were passed, you'd have $26 trillion in debt for the United States, and we'd be paying $20 billion a week in interest payments alone. You're coming up right on top of a debt crisis if you put this kind of budget into practice. And we don't want that in America now, do we?
You do? Rich?
I'll tell you what we do want. If you ask those folks on the street, and if you ask 3 out of 4 of Americans, say the priority is jobs, jobs, jobs. And that's what Obama's budget pays attention to. Deficits will matter later, but first we got to focus on jobs.
I mean, how later? You're not worried about these deficits?
Well, that's the good news, is we've had 5 months of straight job growth, and things aren't perfect, but the dawn is breaking. The president has momentum because of his leadership, and once
dawn
jobs
is breaking.
Wait a second. Wait a second. You cannot be paying $9 billion a week in interest as we are right now, heading towards a debt crisis, and think that somehow or other everything is going just fine. We're heading to a point where you and this budget is going to drive us into a very nasty recession. Have you seen what's going on in Greece?
The irony is conservatives didn't point that out when Bush was spending like
That's
a
got
drunken
nothing to
sailor.
do with this
But agree.
That's why we're in this recession. It has everything to do with it.
Rubbish. Sorry,
But
rubbish.
it's true.
It does.
Bush, the Republicans under Bush spent like crazy.
And cut taxes.
Look, are we discussing this budget, which I call irresponsible?
Yeah.
What do you call it?
This budget is a response to the economic circumstances the president finds himself. Thanks to his leadership, every economist agrees that after we spent on the first stimulus, it added tens of millions of dollars, both in the private sector and the public sector.
Do you want America to look like Europe? Do you?
That's an irrelevant question. Because
no, it's not.
But I assume you do.
Europe's a continent, not a country. So that's point number one.
Look, do you want America to run up this kind of debt, which is European in its scale? If you do, you're going to have precisely the same crisis here as you've got there.
Of jobs.
Oh, whoop-de-doo! 5 months of job growth.
Tell Americans who are unemployed, who want the president to focus on jobs, whoop-de-doo. I think it's easy to say in a comfortable studio. I don't think most Americans would be pleased about that.
All right, let's move on.
Irrelevant to the argument here. Utterly irrelevant.
One other point, people on...
It's not. It is irrelevant, sir.
All right, stop. One other point that people on the progressive side make is that, hey, interest rates are still low. If this is a coming crisis, how come rates are low? But the problem does happen suddenly. Look at this graph of what happened in Greece. For year after year, the bonds sold for very little money, and then suddenly in 2010, the rate went up to almost 20%, and then suddenly 129%. When it blows up quickly.
Can I just spell things out here? There will come a time, probably within 2 or 3 years, when those people who are lending us all of these trillions of dollars say, wait a minute, not quite sure we're going to get the money back. So we'll lend it to you, but you've got to pay us a lot more interest. That's the point we reach when interest rates spike. And that's the point. Hold on a second. That is the point when the economy falls off a cliff, unemployment goes through the roof, and you've got a Greek-style tragedy. Okay?
But without
That's reality,
but if you want to compare to Greece, do we want Greek levels of unemployment also? I mean, if we want this faulty comparison?
I don't want that to happen. It's going to happen if we do what Obama wants to do.
No, it's going to happen if we don't do what Obama wants to do. If we don't invest in jobs.
Well, let him make his point here.
We're going to have Europe-style. We're going to have Europe-style unemployment.
So
thank goodness.
Jobs get created when government spends a lot of money?
that has happened. Every economist across the political spectrum has said that because of the first stimulus
I'm looking for these economists.
Because of the first stimulus spending has added
How can you let this guy get away with this nonsense?
Tens of millions of jobs.
This factually nonsense.
Nonsense. It is true.
Nonsense.
As an undeniable fact, the first stimulus
I can't argue with nonsense. I can't argue with utter
You don't
nonsense.
want to argue. Conservatives don't want to argue with this nonsense. And why, if that's not the case, did the conservative governors, the conservative lawmakers not reject that money if it didn't work? Huh?
What are you
Well, if you're going to give governors money, they're going to take the money.
Exactly.
What are you talking about?
If it didn't work, why did the conservative governors take it?
You're happy to run up $26 trillion in debt? You're happy to do this?
Nobody's happy, but it's the circumstances the president has found himself in.
No, he doesn't find himself in those circumstances. He doesn't have to do this.
George Bush squandered a surplus that Clinton left him.
Dear Lord.
And this is the circumstances that Obama has found himself in.
You, young man, are going to ruin the country that I came to looking for opportunity, freedom, liberty, and progress. And you are going to run into the ground. I am appalled.
By himself?
Stay here.
These ideas are going to ruin America.
They are supported by America.
We're already on the European road, and we are going down the wrong road. We're going towards crisis, and you, sir, with your ideas, are going to ruin this great country.